This video series will cover photosynthesis. Now, simply summarized, for photosynthesis, the leaves of the plant have chloroplasts that are filled with chlorophyll. The chlorophyll captures the energy from sunlight. Water will enter through the roots. CO2 will enter through the stomate openings on the underside of the leaves. The water and the CO2 will move to the chloroplast. Chemical reactions there will occur and produce oxygen and sugars like glucose, which is C6H12O6, and then the cells will use the energy in the sugars to function. And this video will cover the steps that these cells go through in order to prepare their food. So first off, the plant chloroplast is found within the leaf of the plant, and it is the leaf that is the photosynthetic part of the plant. It captures the light energy and converts it to chemical energy, and it stores that chemical energy. This is known as photosynthesis. The specific part of the leaf that functions for photosynthesis is the chloroplast, and each one of those little dark green circles is a chloroplast structure. So the chloroplasts are the site of photosynthesis. Chloroplasts are found in all green plant parts. The leaves are the major site of photosynthesis in the plant. Chlorophyll is the green pigment in the chloroplast that gives the leaf its color. Chloroplasts are found primarily in cells of the mesophyll of the leaf, and each mesophyll will contain between 30 and 40 chloroplasts. Now, the chloroplast is divided into three parts. The first part that we have is the stroma, which is a fluid-filled space outside of the thylakoid, and this is where the Calvin cycle occurs. The thylakoid, which are the flattened membrane sacs inside of the chloroplast, this is where the light reaction occurs. The grana, which is the whole stack. Now, each one is a thylakoid, but the whole stack is known as a grana. And then the inner membrane space is a double membrane that partitions its content and keeps it from the cytoplasm or the cytosol. Now, here we have the formula for photosynthesis. The formula for photosynthesis is the opposite of that of cell respiration. The reactants in photosynthesis are the products of cell respiration, and the products of photosynthesis are the reactants of cell respiration. In other words, they are opposite. And they are opposite because both are cycles, and because both are cycles that are interconnected, they keep the oxygen CO2 level in the atmosphere stable. The overall photosynthetic equation has been known since the early 1880s. Glucose is the major product of photosynthesis. Water should appear on both sides of the equation because 12 molecules are going to be consumed and 6 new molecules will be formed during photosynthesis. The discovery in the 1930s that the oxygen given off by plants was derived from the water and not the carbon dioxide was one of the earliest clues to the mechanism of photosynthesis and indicates that the chloroplasts split the water into hydrogen and oxygen. So the products of photosynthesis would be glucose, oxygen, water, and ATP energy. The ATP molecule stands for adenosine triphosphate. It's made up of the nitrogen base adenine, the 5-carbon sugar ribose, and 3 phosphate groups. Between each of the phosphates, we have a bond, and between the ribose and the phosphate, we have a bond. When bonds are broken, energy can be released. When bonds are formed, energy is stored. The 2 stages of photosynthesis include the light reaction, which occurs in the thylakoid, and the Calvin cycle, which occurs in the stoma. Now, the Calvin cycle is also called the dark reaction because light is not needed for the Calvin cycle to occur. Now, the light reaction occurs in the thylakoid, and it involves the conversion of light energy into chemical energy, and this is known as photolysis. Water is split during this process, and oxygen is released as a byproduct. Now, this is the reason that plants make oxygen. The coenzyme NADP will pick up hydrogens and electrons from that split water molecule and store them for use for the Calvin cycle or the dark reaction. ATP is also generated and stored for energy in the dark reaction. And when we look at this, the electrons can flow in two possible routes. This route here is known as the cyclic flow and is the simplest pathway. It generates ATP only. This side is known as the non-cyclic flow. This light reaction usually happens this way, and this is the way where NADP is formed. Now, the Calvin cycle is also known as the dark reaction since light is not needed for this step to occur. During this cycle, carbon dioxide from air is fixed to a 5-carbon sugar called ribulose bisphosphate by the addition of the electrons from the NADP from the light reaction, and that is called carbon fixation. And that's right along here. And this is going to result in a new unstable 6-carbon sugar. This unstable 6-carbon sugar begins to go through a series of chemical reactions. Now, there are two necessary components for carbon fixation to occur, and that's going to be the electron source from our NADPH and an energy source from the ATP. Both of those will come from the light reaction. Water is released as a byproduct, and glucose is made as the plant food or energy. Ribulose bisphosphate is the 5-carbon sugar that's made at the end of the cycle and again is used to combine with the carbon dioxide to keep carbon fixation and the cycle continuing. Now notice that we needed 9 molecules of ATP and 6 molecules of NADPH are needed to produce one glucose molecule.